Wagner Group versus US Army, an example of modern warfare. This is what we're going to talk about today. What I'm trying to do, I'll show you a real example. We don't have to invent anything. This has really happened. When the Wagner Group, which is Russian army, engaged in a military conflict with the Army of the United States. And we will see what happened. We know already what happened, but many of you maybe didn't see it before. I want to show how the modern warfare looks like. It's not what happened in Ukraine right now. This is not even close. The war Russia is fighting in Ukraine, it's more something in between World War II and World War I. Sometimes World War I. And the equipment Russia using, sometimes it's almost like Russians T-34 tanks. And we will see how the real conflict, when Russians are Russian propaganda is trying to say that, oh, we fight in NATO. What will happen if Russia will fight NATO? We already know what happened, and we will see it today. And we know now more than we knew in 2018 when it actually happened. It happened in 2018 in Syria. It was a Battle of Conoco Fields or Battle of Khasham. Hi, I'm Elena. Welcome to my political channel Enough of Propaganda. As I told you before, and many of you, I have lots of men on my channel, lots of military men, so you already know the modern warfare conducted from the sky with using, for example, AC-130 and so on. So modern military planes and everything else. This is how it's done. I will not go too much into details about how the armies get into this and so on. There is several different videos, very good ones about that, and one of them is done by Task and Purpose, why US troops fought Wagner mercenaries in Syria. And today we just will talk about Battle of Conoco Fields or Battle of Khasham. 500 soldiers, which were partly Syrian army, the government soldiers of Syria, and Wagner mercenaries from Russia in Syria encountered elite army, elite units of the Army of the United States, which like originally was about maximum to 40 people. This was first time since Russia was fighting United States since 1917. For many years, Russia was supporting bloody regimes in Syria, and by the way, that modern regime of Bashar Assad, the regime who killed his own people and used chemical weapons against its own people. But it's Russians' ally. Russians' allies these days just murderous bastards from all over the world. And I would say it's not the first time on Russia in Syria. Don't think they started to be there since like 2015. Russia were there even during USSR time. The USSR were there. And Russian pilots were training Syrians and flying helicopters there and doing lots of other things. So Russia was not going to lose an ally, and they decided, since United States started to fight terrorists since 2014, and Russia decided to support the regime of Bashar Assad. Support him even more than they did before, by bringing troops basically there. Since 2014, United States was supporting Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, and Russia get engaged more in a year later, but the year we're going to talk about it is 2018. Syrian government forces and SDF basically avoided each other, but they were fighting terrorists and stuff like that, and that's what United States was helping to do as well. And by 2018, both sides kind of were more or less at peace with each other and just successfully avoiding each other. And basically got terrorism under control, more or less, at the time. ISIS already held only just a fraction of the bases they originally had. At the time, in Syria were Russians and Americans. And just to prevent the conflict between them, there was formed the confliction line, which was going along the river Euphrates. And more or less, both sides was agree with it. Not everybody in Syria will agree with it, but they knew where the line is, and they were more or less agree on that. So the Euphrates River were separating the both sides, and they knew where it was, where the line is, and they shouldn't be there. They should be on their side of the river. Also, to prevent conflicts, both parties, Russia and United States, could contact each other in case something happens. The base which was attacked by Russians and Syrian army was about 5 miles over the river and controlled one of the main oil fields in the country. The oil field was on the Syrian Democratic Forces side, and the Syrian government and Russian troops attacked it. Wagner group possibly thought that it would be a walk in the park, and they're gonna just go and take it. So they crossed the line, they went to the Conoco oil field, and they wanted to take the base, and they wanted to take it. And that's why it's all happened. And yet, the United States and the Syrian Democratic Forces stood up against them. So with artillery, rocket launchers, and tanks, they started to shelling oil fields and base without even warning. Not only Syrian forces get attacked, but Americans. American Green Berets and American army units and special forces. And they were attacked. The Russian troops and Syrian troops didn't have air support, though.
While everything was initially going according to plan for the attacking forces, the phone suddenly rang in the Russian headquarters near the Euphrates.
Of course, United States phoned to Russians and Russian headquarters, and they was asking what is happening. Is there Russian troops there? Because Americans heard on radio they speak in Russian. Yet, you can guess it, Russians denied it. Oh, there is no Russian troops. There are no Russian troops in there. There is no problem. So Americans decided, okay, we're gonna defend it. And we're gonna give them all our might. And that's what happened. This is General Braga. That's what he has to say.
30 different artillery rounds.
General Braga says he immediately picked up a hotline to the Russian military.
So you called and said, stop this?
Yes, I did.
What response did you get?
Those are not our forces.
U.S. forces were unconvinced. Braga says they gathered in this building to launch a counterstrike, raining down artillery and airstrikes.
The Russian High Command in Syria assured us that it was not their people, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis told senators in his testimony. He said he directed General Joseph F. Dunford Jr., chairman of the Joint Chiefs of the Staff, for the force then to be annihilated. And it was. After the first several minutes, 15 minutes or so, United States military officials called their Russian counterparts and urged them to stop the attack. When it failed, United States troops fired warning shots at a group of vehicles and a howitzer. Still the troops advanced. The response wasn't delayed. Russian convoy lined up, like they always do, and first and last vehicle were destroyed immediately. And then Russians and Syrians didn't know what hit them. Partly it was drones, and lots of other planes were involved. US warplanes arrived in waves, including Reaper drones, F-22 stealth fighter jets, F-15E Striker fighters, even B-52 bombers, and AC-130 gunships, and AH-64 Apache helicopters. And for the next 3 hours, United States officials said, scores of strikes pummeled enemy troops, tanks, and other vehicles. And Marine rocket artillery was fired from the ground, and they just destroyed. In the first minutes, over 200 people were killed on the ground.
200 to 300 of the Russian force was killed. Is that accurate?
Oh, and that's, I would say, close to our estimates as well.
Russians didn't even know what hit them. Like, it was happened so fast. And many of those planes, some of them wasn't even visible to them. It was just shock, panic, and HIMARS was involved as well, and they were destroyed. They were shocked how fast and how quickly it happened. That Apache helicopters and AC-130 and so on, it was just basically they were wiped out. This is what happened when modern army fighting modern war. The people who witnessed that, that's what they say. The reports that are on TV about, well, you know, about Syria and the 25 people that are wounded there from Syrian army. Make it short, we had our aces kicked. And immediately they lost 215 people in one squadron, and another 110 people, and the third squadron was attacked as well, and they lost people there too. This is what they're saying. First they blasted them by artillery, and then helicopters show up, and they were, like they said, merry-go-round. That was Apache helicopters.
They were all showing the holy out of it, and our guys didn't have anything besides the assault rifles. Nothing at all, not even mentioning shoulder-fired SAMs or...
So they tore us to pieces for sure, put us through hell.
And the Yankees knew for sure that the Russians were coming, that it was us, Russians. Our guys were coming to commandeer an oil refinery, and the Yankees were holding it. We got our beat rough. My men called me. They're there drinking now. Many have gone missing. It's a total It sucks. Another takedown.
This was the statement of the person who witnessed it. And Russian planes were ready to take off, but they never did. They knew, because Americans keep calling them and keep talking to them, and the Russians keep denying that it was Russian forces, so they didn't have excuse to engage, and they couldn't help the Wagner troops on the ground. The statement from Wagner troop, Wagner soldier, was that Americans wiped them out. He was saying that ours just running around. Just got a call from a pal, and there was about 215 killed. They simply rolled ours out hard, made their point. What is ours we're hoping for in there? So Russia couldn't fight back then, and the Prigozhin coup in Russia showed very clearly that Russian army is not the second army in the world, and it's not even second army in Ukraine. It's second army in Russia after Wagner Group. And if Wagner Group is that bad, you can imagine what Russia's army is. And the Battle of Conoco Fields proved beyond any doubt that a Russian army is no match to American army whatsoever. And Wagner mercenaries, they only can kill innocent civilians, rape them, and chop people into pieces and kill people with a sledgehammer. But when they encounter a real army, whose bosses and commanders and who is leaders of their country, not stealing money from their own troops, this is what happened. This is the difference. When I was researching it for my book about Russia and about America and about war in Ukraine, I find out that the expenses of United States Army were about, at the time when I was researching, $700 billion, and Russians was about 70. And for many years, Russian expenses was even less. So right now, when Russians believe they fight in NATO, they weren't. Little Ukraine, who trained by United States and Canada and some other NATO countries, basically beat up Russian army before even they get too much help from everybody. Russians trying to deny now that they wanted to take Kyiv in 3 days. They were. They stated as much clearly in Russian and in English and in every possible language you can translate it, and they failed. They failed because Ukrainian army beat them up. Because this is what real army looks like. And Ukrainian army gonna be one of the best armies right now after they have, unfortunately, that experience in the battle. I also want to underline that from America, nobody was even hurt. One Syrian fighter was wounded. That's it. And he survived. And from 500 soldiers of Syrian army and Wagner, about half was dead right away. So this is the difference between real army and this This is Yevgeny Prigozhin after his coup. And this is what Putin has to say.
Содержание всей группы «Вагнер» полностью обеспечивалось государством. Из Министерства обороны, из государственного бюджета мы полностью финансировали эту группу.
The point is, every war crime committed by Wagner, committed by Russian army. This is Russian army. It's not mercenaries. They are not private company. They are Russian army. They were created as a buffer for Russians could say, it's not us. It's not us torturing, killing people in Africa or in Syria or somewhere else. It's Wagner. Now Putin was stupid enough to admit it, that it was a Russian army. So now I'm expecting lawsuits and everything about charging Russia with all kind of war crimes committed by Wagner, because it's just been proven that we didn't know it in 2018 officially, now we do. This is the difference. This is why I made this video, partly to show what a modern warfare looks like and what would happen if NATO will fight with Russia. NATO doesn't want war with Russia. NATO doesn't plan to do it. It's all in Putin's imagination and lies. He not even believe it in it himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't remove troops with the border with NATO country Finland right now and send them to Ukraine. But he's lying and he's using it as a pretext. Oh, NATO scared Russia. That's why we had to do this and we had to do that. But the fact is, NATO is defensive alliance and they didn't attack Russia. Nobody attacked Russia. Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 and in 2022. If NATO would have attacked Russia, this is what would have happened. In the first few days after full-scale invasion in Ukraine, when the Russian army stupidly lined up almost across whole Ukraine, it would have happened exactly like in Battle of Khasham. The first and last vehicles would be bombed, and then hell will break loose, and Russian army would have been destroyed. But it wasn't, because Russia is the army with the nuclear bombs. That is why every country was staying away, and the only can do is just support Ukraine in their fight by providing them weapons. Keep supporting Ukraine. This is also an interesting article, and you're welcome to read it yourself. This is how it happened. And this is what would have happened if NATO was actually fighting Russia. It never happened. NATO never wanted to attack Russia. The only attack happened. Russia attacked NATO. Wagner Group and Syrians attacked, crossed the line and attacked United States. And attacked Syrian fighters from the group supported by United States. And what happened? They were wiped out. Lies of Russia is getting so unbearable that there is no point, absolutely nothing, to listen to anything Russia has to say, because they claimed, oh, there was no Wagner there. Then there was Wagner, but only very few of them get killed and this and that. This is one of the articles, and I can confirm the translation, where they were sent and why. They were sent like a pigs to slaughter. That was an interview with the wife of one of the of the soldiers of Wagner, who died in Syria in that battle. He was from Ural, and they were saying exactly about that there el-Zour, and many people of Russian PMC Wagner, as they call it at the time, many of them died there. So it's all confirmed, and this is the truth how it is. Also, I need to mention that after, there were another group, about the same amount of people, was trying to attack these fields again, and they was kind of preparing, but Americans called Russians again, and they said, we're gonna whack them again. So they quickly withdrew. It didn't happen. Thank you for watching, and have a great day or evening. See you later.